She was like the Terminator, you guys. She would not stop, ever. So when this movie was over, my son and I were talking, and he was saying something like, she's like the Terminator. Like, yeah, she would not stop ever until you were dead. I'm speaking specifically, of course, about Wanda Maximoff in Doctor Strange 2, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. That's quite a mouthful there. So, yes, Wanda is definitely the antagonist in this film. In WandaVision, people were talking about how, oh, she's so very clearly the villain, and oh, Wanda's just was so terrible. I had a little bit more sympathy and understanding for her situation, because for much of that film, actually, she had developed this mental block about what she'd done. When that veneer or that block started to, get chipped at, she would just close it back up again and shut off whatever. So I felt like in WandaVision, she wasn't completely in her right mind, or let's say aware of what she was doing to people around her. Every now and again she'd kind of have these but then she would just like, nope, like she just didn't want to hear it. She wanted to know nothing. She wanted to live in her little bubble with her vision and her kids and all that. So she was a sympathetic character to me. In this movie, she sort of is as well a sympathetic character, but she goes over the line into full-on bad guy territory. She's definitely the bad guy in here. She is the main, pretty much there's different characters in here, but she is like the main baddie in Doctor Strange 2, let's say. And I mean, I get where her motivations were coming from. Just like, let's say, with the father of Shang-Chi, I understood completely why he was the way he was. He was a sympathetic character. In some ways, Wanda is as well, but she just goes over this line that just feels so... It just like feels like she just went completely over the deep end. And so it's like it's almost like she became this completely different character than what we sort of knew her as when she was on the good side of things. I know she started off being bad. I know she's kind of had this sort of history in the comics anyway, so it's not necessarily anything new. But she was hardcore, you guys, like hardcore. And as I mentioned in my Out of the Theater reaction video, I had heard it mentioned that this felt like more like a horror story, and in a lot of ways it does. I mean, there's quite a bit of killing that goes on. It's kind of bloody, and in a lot of ways it kind of veers outside of normal safe feeling Marvel territory, sort of, kinda. But not really. I mean, it's still very much a Marvel movie. It's got that same formula for the most part. As I said, there are two post-credit scenes, one in the middle, one at the very, very end. And cool cameos. I really enjoyed the cameos. They were probably the highlight of the film. And also seeing Wanda Maximoff's powers fully realized. Like, she is just like, you can't stop her. There's nothing that can stop her. She is way, way, way too powerful. She's almost overpowered in here. But we do get the question answered as far as who, because there was like this debate, Captain Marvel's supposed to be the strongest, and we don't see Captain Marvel in here in the way that you're thinking. Remember, this is a multiverse movie, so bear that in mind. So I'm not giving you huge spoilers, but it's been settled once and for all, Captain Marvel is not the strongest. I've always felt, well, not always, but let's say after Avengers Endgame came out, I felt like Scarlet Witch was the most powerful, because she was the one that almost single-handedly took down Thanos. I mean, she almost had him. The only thing that made that stop was that he did something with the cannons or something on the ship up there and blasted her or whatever. But with Captain Marvel, I mean, he bitch slapped her across the field, which I was very happy to see that, because I can't stand the character of Captain Marvel in this series of movies. So cameos, cool cameos. Scarlet Witch is super, super strong, scary strong, will not stop strong, vicious strong, bloodthirsty strong, and it's a little like I'm still trying to process what I saw. So the movie gets started off. It's just action. It feels like there's so much action in here. There's not really a ton of downtime, to be honest. There's a lot of action stuff happening. It starts off with action. There's a tiny little break, then there's more action, and there's a few moments of downtime in between. There's a lot of really crazy, wonky stuff going on because of the multiverse and stuff like that, and the weird things that happen in these places, and Doctor Strange, the first Doctor Strange was kind of weird that way, as far as that wonky imagery that we see and all that. So there was more of that, even more of that, than I felt like there was in the first Doctor Strange film. But one of the good things too about this film is that it's not overly long. And when I say overly long, like let's say 2.5 to 3 hours, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It all depends on the movie. But I do feel like if this film had been pushing the territory of, let's say, the Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, or even, let's say, the Batman or Justice League, of course. I mean, that would have felt way too long. There was a lot happening. There were a lot of different characters in here. At the same time, it didn't really feel like it was overly crowded. Even though we got several cameos, they weren't huge. They weren't a huge presence in the film. And so therefore, I think that kind of helped keep it from feeling like it was overcrowded. Since this is a multiverse type of movie, we're going to get a bunch of different characters from different universes that are going to be interacting. And so there was that, but at the same time, it still felt like it was handled pretty good. I mean, I didn't feel like, wow, there's just way too many people in here. There's way too much story to tell and not enough time to tell. I really didn't feel that way. This, of course, is still, the movie's very fresh. I'm still thinking about it. It's not my favorite Marvel movie. I don't think it really will be. I think Captain America the Winter Soldier is probably always going to be my favorite Marvel movie. Iron Man is on up there too, obviously, because it was just so well done. And of course, as the MCU got bigger and bigger and bigger, and just they started incorporating all these other crazy fantastical things about it, that sort of, I don't know, it changed the feel of the MCU. When we got started off with Iron Man, it was just like, oh, okay, it's stuff that's sort of realistic, true, sort of grounded in some semblance of reality. And then we go out into Thor, Incredible Hulk, and now this is full-on supernatural stuff happening. And so, there's just no rules as far as realism go. I'm sure probably if I rewatch this multiple times, which I'm sure I will rewatch it at some point, I'll find holes that I didn't really think about at the time. There was one sort of plot hole that I was like, well, how in the world did she end up at this very exact place? Blah, blah, blah. But I think it's just because it was part of her power. She was able to hone in on certain places. And also the character introduced America Chavez. I think they called her, I think her hero name is like Miss America or I can't remember. Anyway, I'm not familiar with her character. I did find out she's in the comics, but I don't really have any memory of her at all. So she may have come along after I was reading them. I did read comics, but I wasn't super prolific into reading. Like they weren't, I wasn't as into them as a lot of comic book nerds really are, and they know their stuff. I wasn't really oh my gosh, I wasn't really superficially into comics. They were a big deal to me, but I wasn't into them enough to know all the ins and outs of all these different characters that show up in here. So I'd never heard of America Chavez, and her power is that she can jump through the different multiverses. She's like this. There's no other representations of her because she's the only one, because she can jump through all these different. Well, I think that was the way it goes. Anyway, so it's a pretty significant power. She does spend much of the movie not really doing much of anything because she's running. She's trying to get away from Wanda because Wanda's after her. I'm trying to keep this as low or non-spoiler as possible, so I'm not going to get into details. But across the way, or throughout the course of the movie, they're on, going to all these different multiverses. If you've seen the trailers, you already know of at least one person, one cameo that's going to be in there, and he was in there. That was very happy. There was some clapping that happened. But there were a couple of other cameos that I had heard of one accidentally, I think it was something that was mentioned that somehow it came out that this particular person was going to be in there. I was like, oh, I didn't want to know that because I wanted to be as surprised as possible, even though I'd already seen the trailer. But there were 3 other cameos that I didn't know of. One character, I don't recognize who they are, and I'm going to keep this I'm trying to be very gender neutral so that I don't give you any hints as to who's in there. I thought I recognized the symbol on this character's costume, but I don't remember what their name is. I feel like based on this person's powers, I have read them before in the comics, but I'm not entirely sure. Then another character, I was a little surprised to see them, but not necessarily, because like I said, it's multiverse. You really can't be surprised. Expect any Marvel character to show up, really. But one of the other cameos that showed up in there, I was completely surprised about, and I was so surprised that I started clapping. There were several people that started clapping, but I was like, and so I don't know what this might mean for any possible things in the future, but I'm hoping that you'll know what I'm talking about when you get to it, just because there's been such a push for this character for the MCU. I don't know if this is a confirmation of these hopes, aspirations for this particular character. I guess we'll see, but let's just say I'm sure my face when I saw, I almost let it slip who they were. I'm sure my face when this character showed up on the screen was like, I was so surprised. And they're not in there very long. None of these little cameos that I'm speaking of are in there to a great extent. They're in there enough, a little taste, it's like, oh, that's cool. But like I said, they do not overpower the presence of the main characters, which is Doctor Strange, that dude right there. I can't remember his name. So, and this dude right here, we knew he was coming back. So like the main characters are Wanda, Doctor Strange, America Chavez. Those are the 3 main characters. And then, of course, you have the supporting characters, him, and also Doctor Strange's love interest. She plays a bit of a significant-ish role in here, definitely more so than I expected she would. But like I said, bear in mind, this is multiverse stuff. And also, the horror aspect of this, definitely very... the imagery in here is, like, we have a freaking... you saw him, a dead Doctor Strange, zombie Doctor Strange character, whatever. We see at one point a like a dark / almost evilish kind of Doctor Strange. You get a taste of him in the trailer, so that's not really a spoiler necessarily, but there is a part in the trailer that does not show up in the final movie, the part where he said something about, like, the bad Doctor Strange said something like, things just got out of hand or something like that. I was waiting for him to say that and trying to, was like, oh, what's this conversation going to be about? What is he talking about here? And that was cut out. Whatever. But as a whole, it was pretty enjoyable, and it was a fairly solid-ish MCU film. It's not anything that I do not know how high. Like I said, I'm still processing this. I have to think about it. The darkness going on with Wanda Maximoff was probably the most impactful, sort of sobering, sad, disturbing thing that happened in this film, and I hated to see the things that her character was going through and what the things she was doing as well, and to see that she had passed fully into, bad guy territory. Just kind of underscoring again that the days of the MCU that we appreciated so much with the Avengers and everything, those are gone. Like, because the Avengers, they're all fragmented. They're really not together anymore. It almost feels like it's just going to be a bunch of standalone films from now on. They're going, I had heard that there's going to be another Avengers movie, but it's just not going to be the same. And this film really did not change my perception, or the perception that I've had for a long time, that the best days of the MCU are behind us. I just don't see how those earlier years from, like, let's say peak came to 1999. 2019 was peak with Avengers Endgame as far as I'm concerned. this does not change my mind about that. I will enjoy the films here and there. Some films I have no interest at all to see and probably will not see. I did not go see The Eternals, was not interested. So I feel like the MCU, they've still kind of, they have lost their luster. As far the MCU has lost its luster. There will be films that will be enjoyable to watch, yes, but as a whole, the franchise as a whole, I just feel like it's not quite as exciting and motive, and that's unfortunate. But I guess that's just kind of a result of them just trying to get so big and do all these things, and just they've done stuff, brought in characters. Haven't really necessarily remained true to the characters. That's kind of pissed some fans off. They've inserted wokish type stuff. It has been inserted here and there, and it wasn't. This one didn't feel overly like woke or agenda driven. Nothing really jumped out and smacked me over the head with, well, this is woke. I'm sure probably people that are super in tune to that sort of thing and know things about these characters that maybe I don't know, they'll pick up on things that I could have missed. But as far as that goes, I didn't really pick up on that. It was enjoyable, sad, dark, not overly long, thank goodness. But at the same time, it makes me a little sad because, like I said, I just feel like the MCU is just it's not what it was. I don't think it ever will be again. And I don't know. That's all I can think of to say. I actually didn't take very many notes at all. This is what I wrote. Action start. I wrote dreams in the multiverse because they say, well, the reason you have these dreams is because these are your other people in the multiverse. So I was like, okay, well, that's kind of cool. Wanda full-on villain, cameos, horror movie, and not overly long. That's what I wrote. That was all I wrote. Because, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something that just inspired a bunch of stuff to write down. I know I've yammered a lot, but I tend to do that anyway when I'm talking about films, especially if I enjoyed something. But I don't have anything else, so I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm hungry too. It's time for supper, and yeah, I'm overdue to eat. So I'm gonna wrap this up so I can edit it and get it up and out for early this morning. And see you guys later. Adios.